Thank you, Ron. And we thought we'd start off with your two council people who I happen to have gone to the Pacific Grove council meeting when they gave their report. They were assigned by the entire council to study this issue about whether it was worth approaching the possibility of being involved. And so I'll let them explain everything they saw or what their take is on this, but I was very impressed by their presentation myself. I've been studying this for a while, and I thought they were really a quick study. So we have Rudy Fisher and Dan Miller here, and Dan, I think, is going to start off. So I'll sit down for the second.
As Mr. Billig said, I'm Dan Miller. I've been on the City Council for about 2.5 years now. I've been a resident of Pacific Grove my entire life, and I went to about 20 years of council meetings before I got on the City Council. And anybody that went to those meetings and saw what I did would realize that I was an advocate for the residents of this town. Very unpopular more often than not, but I truly felt I was representing the people of this town. On the council now, and with this project, I feel I'm doing the same thing. If I was sitting out there where you are, I'd have the question whether or not I'd be supportive of this project. As a council person, I look out and I see a lot of people in this community that can't afford another $600 a year for just a bare bones amount of water. At the beginning, the vote was 6-1 on the council to continue looking at it with Mr. Fisher and myself as the subcommittee with Mr. Frucci, and to meet with Mr. Aga and continue on looking at things. And then that changed down the road to 5-2 because somebody jumped ship, and I guess whatever their thinking was, that's up to them to answer. So many concerns have been asked about this, and from the very beginning there were some criteria that I had that I wouldn't move forward or recommend this project at all. That is, A, the City of Pacific Grove has no discretionary money right now that they can just spend on something that may be whimsical. Second of all was to protect us in the case of any kind of litigation. And third was to make sure that the end result would be that something very positive would come back to the community. Rather than just end up being some deep, dark abyss and, fighting litigation and everything else. One of the things that I hate most in this world is litigation. And as we've seen with almost every water proposal, project, and everything, you'll read in the paper one day, here's the proposal, the next day you'll read that there's litigation involved with it. And so right now, it's at the cost of all of us who need water. And the only people getting wealthy here, and sorry about this, Paul, but and maybe not wealthy, but better to do, are the attorneys. So in every step of the way that I have looked at this, I have stepped back and looked for red flags. That which I feel is a deal breaker. And there are many of them that can come down the line. If the state says we're not going to compel Cal-Am to buy your water, if we have an engineer coming from the city, is in addition to Mr. Mickley, who's looked at the project and found no fault with it, and vetted it very well, we're going to put somebody forward and look at the project and make sure from the city's viewpoint, from the city's interests, that everything is as presented and there is no risk involved for the city. And this is the key to all of this. No matter what anybody else tells you, there is not risk to the city. And if it gets to the point where the $150,000 Mr. Aga has pledged for expenses, attorneys, engineers, everything else that we may come up with, $450,000 that he's willing to put up for an environmental impact report. If at the end of that, it looks like it's not going to make sense for the city of Pacific Grove to continue to be involved, or if somewhere along the line the game changes, because a lot of this is controlled by Sacramento, then we still have the ability to pull out of it, and we have risked nothing, ventured nothing. All our expenses, whether they be our city attorney, the new attorney that we now have out of Sacramento, the city manager's expense, any city clerk expense, any expenses to do with this project are reimbursed. There's actually, how much an hour for each position in the city that is involved. So having gone through that, having vetted this, having looked at all the reports, having done a lot of research, having used a lot of the research that Councilmember Fisher has come up with, and he's been incredibly diligent in this. And I would, and this wouldn't have happened without him. When this first came up, the only person willing to be on an ad hoc committee with me was Councilmember Fisher, which I guess some people could look at it as the kiss of death, or could look at the fact that there's somebody that realizes that down the road we may end up with water rationing, half the hotel rooms we have now being able to be occupied, half the tables in restaurants being able to be occupied, and basically our whole economy, which is, as we all know, is visitor-based, basically disintegrating before our eyes. Then you will have, you know, less in your money for your schools, less money for your streets, and trust me, right now we're on a shoestring as it is. So I know there's concerns in the community. A few people that are here tonight have sent me emails. I tried to assuage their fears and answer their questions, because I find there's a lot of people that don't know the answers to questions that they come up with, because there hasn't been something like this where you could get your questions answered. I plan to continue living here the rest of my life and bring my kids up here, and having grown up here and love this community as much as I do, I would never do anything that I felt would harm this community. I truly believe, after having read all the documents that pertain to this, and really vetting it, really looking at it, and trying to find problems with it, that where we're at right now with it is in a very good place. You know, people have legitimate questions, but to every one of those legitimate questions, there's a good answer. So please don't be worried about the questions. Don't be worried about the figures being thrown out, because again, that's all fluid. There's, possibility that we're going to lease instead of buy. There's, and also realize the figure being put out there of just under $130 million is like the Cadillac of desal plants. That includes solar panels to provide the electricity, things like that we don't necessarily have to have, but is something that, again, the worst possible case scenario is that figure. And when you look at CalAm and what is being proposed by them, you're going to see your bill, instead of maybe going from $25 to $45, you're going to see it go from $25 to $100. And everybody says, and I'll leave it with this because people know that I can get very long-winded, people say, well, why would CalAm take something that's more expensive, the more expensive way to do this? And I think if you follow what they've done so far with the dams in Carmel Valley, with the buttressing that now we have to pay for, with everything they do, all of us, everybody out there, has to pay not only the cost to CalAm to do these projects, you have to give their shareholders every time my belief, I believe, is every single time they've been to the CPUC, they have gotten 10% profit for everything they spent. Now, I don't know how many of you out there are getting 10% return on a regular basis on your investments, but CalAm's basically guaranteed that 10%. So the more they spend, the more they actually are going to get back, because on their project, which costs $300 million, they're going to get $30 million. If they were to do this project, they're going to get about anyway, it's a third as much or right around a third as much as they would get with their project. So just to realize, and also, again, their project, as it stands right now, is in litigation. They're planning on property that they don't even have control of to be where they store their water and the aquifer and everything. So when you're looking at a drop dead date of just a few years away, it was established about 20 years ago, the drop dead date. And right now, we're no closer. We're no closer than we were 20 years ago. And that's why we got involved, was because nobody else was taking the ball and running with it and doing what needs to be done. So you can look at it that it's too big for Little Pacific Grove to do, but Little Sand City has their own desal plant. The aquarium has their own desal plant. And we believe that eventually, as this goes along, and depending on the findings with the CPUC and what everybody else finds out, the engineers and everything, that we're going to get a lot of other cities that are going to jump on board, and we'll be able to move forward, and there won't be any backdoor taxes to anybody to do it. So.